member of someone struggling in addiction, some kind of substance abuse or some other compulsive behavior. And yes, doom scrolling falls under compulsive behavior, and you're doing all you can do to try to help them, and nothing seems to work long term. You're going to want to stick around for a little bit. If you've been waiting for us to come live, I apologize. We are still operating a residential program, and sometimes I get a little tripped up. And we really tried to go on earlier today, but we're going to squeeze something in. It's not going to be as long, and maybe that's a good thing. But what I want to talk about today for families of addiction, spouses, parents, um, siblings, even close friends, how are you doing? How are things going? How long have you been in this journey or this nightmare, as I hear a lot of people describe it? I want to talk about moving from chaos to peace. And that's not just a tagline, it is absolutely possible. And I know this because I've lived it. If you don't know who we are, my wife and I'm Miles, and my wife Tina. We founded a program 2 decades ago after our own decades of family dysfunction, growing up in alcoholic homes, each of us, the loss of my younger brother to a drug overdose, and also overcoming our own addiction. And we have poured all of our behavioral expertise, our lived experience, and now our professional experience into this 2 decades plus journey to help families. And we've worked with thousands of families. And one of the things that we've discovered, I think really one of the most important things we've discovered, is that when families are involved in the recovery process, then not only does everybody have an opportunity to heal, but the addict stands a much greater chance. And I'm not talking about showing up in the last week of a 30-day program for Family Day, where you get to learn, you get a little hour long lecture about codependency. Because the reality is even though the family and the addict are in the same dysfunctional cycle, both parties are seeing it and experiencing it from two completely different perspectives, right? There's the addict pain, and then there's the family pain. There's the addict perspective, and then there's the family perspective. And families aren't taught what to do. And so, what we do as family members, and as I mentioned earlier, I've been on all sides of this thing. So you'll hear me reference we a lot because I'm right there with you. But what families tend to do when they're dealing with a loved one who is struggling, we tend to think in logical terms, right? And I've got another apology because I've got a whole slideshow that I wanted to share with you, to give you some visuals. And my studio software is not working today, but I'm still running through it, and I'm gonna articulate these things as best I can. I know visuals help, but this is about you challenging your own beliefs about addiction and recovery. And well, why is that important? Because think about where you're at now. Now, if you're what I've described in the beginning, if you're a family member, or friend, sibling, whatever, um, and you're at this point where you've already been in this nightmare for a while, then I know that you're exhausted. I know you're confused. I know you're scared to death. I know you're angry and you're bitter and you're going broke and all these other things that we as family members, we try to help our loved one, and it seems so rational, it seems so logical. If we could just remove the stress from our addict's life, then they will finally be okay. Okay, because now let's move to the other side of the street. The addict perspective is, of course the addict patient doesn't know that. This it can be part of the manipulation. It's also part of the brain that has been rewired through addiction. Who complains about, oh, if I didn't have all this stress, and every time they relapse or every time they shoot themselves in the foot, They're always pointing to some external thing. Well, it's that job I couldn't stand, or it's that boss that was mean to me, or it's the electric company quit working with me, and my landlord wouldn't work with me anymore, and the car people screwed me over. And so, as family members, we hear that, especially mama bears. We want to come running. We want to come to the rescue. We want to save them, rescue them from their pain. And as family members, we can be so good at that. I mean, masterful at that. And then they do good for a while, right? It seems to work. Wow, what happened? They're doing so good now. Finally, we can get back to normal. That's part of the problem, and I'll get to that in a minute. Um, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, our addict loved one goes back downhill. Just one day, it's like, hey, I'm good. And then they relapse. But if you've seen any of my videos on relapse, you know that relapse is not an event. Relapse is a process. So by the time they relapse, they were already in motion. There were 9 stages that the addict goes through before they drink or use again. And I've got a video on that. It's actually part of our family group environment. We do it often because we want everybody around the addict to recognize when they're on their relapse path so that you can try to intervene. And as long as your addict is willing to be teachable, which is kind of our job, is to get them to that place, then you're going to head off a full blown return to use experience. So, okay, so that's a long way to say let's challenge some of your beliefs about addiction and recovery. Why your rescuing didn't work, and how addiction rewires the brain. Why your logical solutions only work in the short term, um, if even that, right? I mean, everybody, we all, and that's another thing about addiction is it's so predictable. And even though when the person is in it, they feel so unique. Nobody could possibly understand our experience. Nobody could possibly know what I'm going through. But the good news is it's just science. It involves understanding addiction involves neurology, physiology, behavioral science, addiction science. We know so much more today than we knew, say, 50 years ago. So that means not only is the development of addiction predictable, that means recovery is also predictable. Recovery is not a maybe thing. Relapse is not part of recovery. And all of these other things that we tend to hear. Well, you never know. Well, we send them to this place. Well, she went to that place, and you just never know. Maybe this time it'll work out. The reality is right recovery systems always work. Okay? Right recovery systems always work. And if you've been in it for a while, you've probably been to a few. Um, the mainstream treatment industry, unfortunately, is not designed to affect change. It's designed to stabilize. And that's what it does. It does that masterfully. It'll stabilize the patient, get them feeling good, offer a little bit of hope, but it's too short of a period of time for any real change to occur. And again, that's one of our false beliefs is that, well, if they can just go to rehab, then they'll get better. If they can go to right rehab, then they can get better, et cetera, et cetera. I could go, I promised you in the beginning that I was going to keep this short. And so I will, but that is such a critical element of how families begin to perceive recovery, that you just never know what you're going to get. And well, where would that lead somebody? Hopeless, confused, desperate, exhausted, scared, right? So that's where families are in the beginning. And that's okay. That's why I'm coming on today to offer you some hope. It is absolutely possible, but you have to be in the process of change, not a process of getting sober. You've already seen that. Anybody can do that. The addict can always stop for a little period of time for whatever reason, to get out, to make mom happy, to get his girlfriend back, to stay out of jail, to whatever, dry out. But then, unless real change occurs, they're always going to return. That's why relapse is part of addiction. It is not part of recovery. The only reason people relapse is because they stopped working recovery. And another way to think about that is the only way people relapse is because they weren't really sure what recovery was supposed to look like. They weren't being taught what real recovery is like. We get taught how to get sober. And then everybody, families included, are shocked and confused when our loved one relapses. But it was actually predictable that they were going to relapse. Now, that may sound really far out there and insane, which just shows how indoctrinated we've become about our ideas of addiction and recovery. Well, you just never know. I've heard people call around rehab places and ask them what their success rate is. Hey, what's your success rate? What's your success rate? And of course, everybody keeps their own success rates, manipulate them the way they want to manipulate them. What we ought to be asking is are you teaching things to your clients that are actually going to impact them for the rest of their life, or are you just teaching them enough to feel better about themselves? And of course, nobody would ever be able to give you an answer. I've got a video on this on TikTok. Okay, but I'm gonna finish. I promise I'm only gonna take maybe 15 more minutes. I want to leave you with some strategies that absolutely work to help your loved one, even when they're resisting. Because that's a big one. I've heard that, talk about false beliefs. I've heard a lot of families say, well, you can't make them want help. That's true. You can't make the other person want help. But families in general simply do not recognize the little bitty, small, intangible things that if they would change, it would move their addict to change. Family, I hear it all the time. I mean, remember, we were that family. We used to say this about my little brother all the time. Oh, we don't enable him anymore. But I did just give him $20 so he could eat today. And then we're confused that he didn't buy food and he bought drugs. It's when families, and you're going to hear some of this stuff that's a little hard to hear, but that's the point. We need to hear it. If we're not uncomfortable in the recovery process, we probably need to switch people that we're talking to. We're probably not doing it right. So again, my name is Miles. My wife and I, Tina, we started Justin's Lighthouse Recovery literally 20 years. I think this is our 21st year, actually. After the death of my little brother, who died from an accidental drug overdose, only 2 weeks having graduated a short-term clinical treatment program. And of course, this is 28 years ago. And we were like, what? That doesn't make any sense, because we had those same ideas. Well, but he went to treatment. You discharged him. What's the deal? We don't understand. And so we spent an enormous amount of time, actually really probably 2 years, researching all of the different treatment modalities. And my older brother, who also has a background in psychology and behavioral science, we got together, and the three of us, my brother and my wife, and we delved into what's good, what's bad, why did this happen, it shouldn't have happened, what's wrong with our thinking, what's wrong with their thinking. And what we discovered was that the mainstream treatment industry is inherently flawed by design. It's not set up, it's so misleading, it's not set up to impact lasting change. It is set up to establish a little bit of stability and then bill. Got to get that billing, got to get that billing, got to get that billing. And they use words like evidence-based practices while not following evidence-based practice. And I'll give you an example. This is this is a sticking point for me. Okay, let's bring real science into it. Real science has taught us that it takes 12 to 18 months for the brain to heal once the person stops using. And in that 12 to 18 months, there is a bit of a roller coaster. It's more stressful in the early stages, but it can stay for a while, especially for stimulant users. And we know for a fact that at 30 days, the brain, meaning the person's mood, the person's outlook, the hopefulness is going to be high at 30 days. And then very quickly, the brain, as it's trying to heal and figure things out, it takes a dip between 30 and 60 days. This is why most relapses occur within 2 weeks following a 30-day program, right around 45 days. So, is it really a best practice to discharge someone at 30 days when they're at the top of a peak? Knowing, I mean, I assume these other professionals know that there's a dramatic dip and it's coming. And that's also the exact same period in which my little brother relapsed and died in his relapse. Uh, Another research study shows that it takes on average a patient 5 rehab attempts, and I'm talking about short-term clinical, 5 of those to finally establish some recovery foundation. That's if you survive it with what's in the drugs today, and it's just a matter of time before they figure out how to get it into alcohol. Most people don't even survive that five rehab cycle. Okay, so that's who we are. That's what drives us. That's what motivates us. That's what pushes us to try to educate as many families as we possibly can, because it is an absolute conquerable experience. But you got to be in a right system of common sense, addiction science, behavioral science, and a whole lot of lived experience behind it. And your success is going to be 100%. And man, that sounds really dramatic. 100%? No way. Well, that's reality. If you follow, let me use an example. If I always like these car examples, and I'm not even a car guy, but they're easy. If you want to paint your car, and you went to the store and you got a bunch of spray paint, and you just went out there and you started painting, and you were done and it looked really goofy, and then a professional painter stepped in and said, wow, well, here's what you did wrong. This is why your car doesn't look so nice. But if you'll follow this procedure, and you'll use this sandpaper and this tool and this product, and then you prime it and follow these steps, you're going to have a beautiful car. It's hard to believe that about addiction and recovery, because we've been so indoctrinated that you never know what you're going to get in recovery. It's a hoping, wishing, maybe this time idea. We've got to shatter that. We've got to quit thinking that way. People are getting better. Families are getting better by the tens of thousands across this country every day, because they got outside of their mainstream clinical treatment thinking. And I'm not bashing anybody in particular. The system is flawed. I still know a lot of good people in that system, and their hands are tied. But they also have a right to have a career and provide for their families. And it is what it is. Not everybody can go out and start their own program like we did. But we were driven by this enormous passion to make sure families could make it. And in that 2 decades, we've helped a lot of people. So um, let's talk about the lies that tend to keep families stuck. And not just families, but the addict too. These are wrong beliefs. Let's challenge some of these. Treatment doesn't work. Right? Have you thought that? I mean, I just spent 5 minutes on it, but have you thought that? Have you thought, treatment doesn't work? And when we're thinking that, what are we basing it on? Well, we're basing it on a bad experience, right? My family said the same thing. Well, treatment didn't work. Um, it's like, wow, the ice cream tasted horrible, but it wasn't ice cream at all. It was fruitcake. It's two completely different things. Um, People say the 12 steps don't work. Well, it's just not true. That remember, there's a difference between principle and actual proper participation. And the people who say 12 steps don't work are people who didn't take it seriously. 12 steps work. I know tons of people that have gone through 12-step programs as an addition to a serious right system recovery process, right? It's an addition. Few people can crawl into a 12-step group and make it. I think the success rates are, I don't know, 8%. But it's not because of the principles aren't solid. The principles are absolutely solid, but you get people and wrong thinking together, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but that's part of the addict problem. The addict's thinking, well, gee, I kind of like this idea and that idea, but I don't like these four ideas over here, so I'm not going to do that. Which is what's referred to as half measures, or partialization. Okay, I'm gonna speed it up. Families tend to think our addict doesn't care, right? If they loved us, they would get serious. If my spouse loved us, he would stop drinking, she would stop using, whatever the case is. Recovery is a maybe thing. You never know what you're gonna get. If we stop enabling them, they will die, right? Or if we stop rescuing them, they will die. So we have to keep paying their rent or they'll be homeless. We have to keep making the car payment so they can get to work. Or the one I hear the most is we have to keep making the car payment because we co signed. And if we stop making the car payment, then it'll get repossessed and it'll hurt the parents' credit. Yeah. Anyway, we've got solutions for that. No sweat. Everything I'm talking about, we've got solutions for. Okay. So another one is, well, if we stop paying the cell phone, we won't be able to reach them, which they never call back anyway. Right. So as family members, we've got to start be willing to revisit some of these old ideas. And when you can do that while receiving new information, right? You don't want to just go back to your old ideas and spin them around in your head. We need new information to process along with it. We need a new measuring stick. We need to bounce some things off of a new perspective. Another thing that families tend to feel is that it's their fault. Right? I think especially parents. I mean, who wouldn't? And I'm a parent of three now adult children, and thank God they have sidestepped, our family genetics, and they're all doing well. We like to think that they all grew up in recovery, and they literally did. I think they could probably come here and teach some of our classes, but families aren't taught about addiction. You don't know about addiction, so as family members, we tend to just kind of fall back into our instincts, fall back into our emotions. And it's easy to think, man, there was that one time when they were 15 and we didn't let them do that thing, or they really caused them to struggle with that period. And if we responded differently then, they wouldn't have this problem today. You can't do that. First of all, it's not healthy. Second of all, it's not true, right? Because if you, the closest place to look is siblings. So let's say it's an adult child or even a spouse. They seem to have so much struggle, but how'd their siblings end up? Well, the other one, he's doing so good, and then there's another one, and she's just doing awesome, and they don't even drink or use or whatever. Right? It's not an environmental thing. So as a parent, you cannot take that on. It's not true. It's holding you back. It definitely prevents as family members, it prevents us from being able to make right decisions regarding recovery. We just tend to make emotional ones. Gosh, if I can just, kind of operating out of guilt, if I can make it so that my loved one feels better or is in a comfortable situation, then I will feel like I've somehow made up for whatever it is I think I screwed up. It's wrong thinking. And this is why logical ideas don't work when it comes to, some of the things that you've done. Think about it or comment it. Um, a lot of the things as family members, and I kind of mentioned this in the beginning, but we'll get them caught up on their rent. We will get their car fixed. We will pay off their credit card debt. We will make that difficult phone call to the boss to tell them that they have the flu and they're not going to be in this week, when really they're drunk as a skunk, and you can't even communicate with them. But there's some kind of covering up, right? There's some kind of protection mode that as a spouse or as a family member we go into, because we're trying to protect them. We're trying to preserve what they may have, believing that we're doing a good thing, and yet they still don't get sober, right? It didn't really impact them change wise. It just helped them to get to the next little moment, and then the next little moment, and then the next little moment. But addiction has rewired the brain. So the addict or alcoholic they don't see themselves and they don't see the world in the same way as a rational brain. It began change a long time ago, and it really has the first to do with trauma, which is why substance abuse became so appealing later in life, and then they just kicked in that addict gene. But we've got videos on this. Go check out some of our trauma videos, and it explains it in great detail. But in recovery, you really want to be addressing brain distortions, right? Because that's an actual part of the problem. You want to be dealing with unresolved trauma, whether the person thinks they have any or not. And that's one of the big ones. Oh, I don't have any trauma, because we don't understand trauma. People don't understand trauma. People tend to think that trauma has to do with their situation. And so we look back throughout our life and we go, I've never had any major event happen that was hurtful, and therefore I don't have any trauma. But that's not how trauma occurs. Trauma occurs from our perspective, how we perceived particular experiences. So in childhood, say a trauma perspective starts to develop that tells the person they're not good enough, right? That's all it takes. You don't have to see your best friend get run over by a bus. You don't have to get caught up in a tornado. You don't have to have your house burned down. It doesn't have to be a major event. It has everything to do with a perspective. And who hasn't had an experience where you didn't get your feelings hurt? Well, in trauma, that person can interpret that experience when their feelings got hurt is that they don't belong. They're not being loved. They're not worthy. They have no value. They're not good enough. And that's all it takes. And everybody's different. So trauma affects people in different ways. That's why recovery, a right recovery system, has to be addressing that. Behavioral changes, right? And as family members, when we're fixing our loved one's situation, what we don't tend to do is demand or work out as part of the situation where they're going to make changes too. We'll get new sofas and new apartments and a different house and a different car and different clothes, and we'll change everything in the situation and hope they change their behavior. There's no plan or procedure that would actually move them into changing their behavior. Well, right recovery systems do exactly that. And then there's the emotional management and the spiritual development. Learning how to manage one's own emotions, not trying not to have them. And spiritual development is everything. Without, if the addict could do it, could change their life on their own, they would have already done it. They can't. The power required is beyond them. And that's in, there's a reason why the spiritual development requirement is part of any kind of treatment modality, because we can't get there in our own power. Now, um, this is such a great slide, and I wish I could show it to you, but I can't. You can actually go on our YouTube channel, which you're on now, but go into the video, and I've actually posted this same presentation from a different day where I have the slideshow, and you'll be able to see the slides. But I'm going to get that worked out too. So, but it just shows how, when the addict comes to the edge of recovery, the brain is so messed up, and whatever it had developed up to that point is still present, even though maybe they're not drinking or using anymore, right? But they're still in chaos, they're still manipulating, they're still isolating, they're still very destructive, and they still want instant gratification, and anything contrary to that feels threatening. So a right recovery system will include slowing down first, not speeding up. Recovery is not a race to the finish. Recovery is not a, oh, hurry up, give me this answer, let me do that workbook, let me finish that workbook assignment, let me do a couple of chores, I'll help this person, I'll build that, I'll talk about this, and I'm good, I'm ready to go back to my life. And you will fail miserably. And some of you have already seen that, maybe multiple times, who knows? That doesn't work. We got to slow down, because we're literally rebuilding a whole new way of thinking, rational thinking, not guru fantastical thinking, but how normal people think. Because the addict doesn't think that way. That's not how the addict thinks. The addict thinks they're the most important person in the room. The addict thinks they're entitled to whatever they want when they want it, which is countered by believing inside they're not good enough. And so that's how the addict lives: shameful, shameless, shameful, shameless. So quick fixes won't work. I've kind of let me see. I'll beat that one to death. Okay, here's some of the ways that family members unknowingly, unwittingly, by accident, completely instinctually keep the addiction cycle going. But remember, it's not your fault. You're just operating from the instinct and rational thinking. It makes sense for a rational person, but it won't work with an addict brain, because the addict brain has been rewired. So as family members, we absorb most of their consequences. Right? They get in legal trouble. We're trying to bail them out as fast as we can, because we can't stand the idea that our loved one is having discomfort. We don't want them sitting in jail cell. So we got to get them out as fast as possible. We'll do things like take them back to work, or take them back to church. Let's get them back to church. Let us remember when they were kids and they used to love this. Let's repeat that. And we're going to pay all your fines, and we're going to pay all your bills, and we're going to get you caught up on the rent, and give you a little cash so you feel like you have some independence, and then we're going to get your car fixed, and everything's going to be great. We're going to prop you back up. And that's really neat. And there's a lot of families that don't have the resources to be able to do that. So when families are able to do that, that's amazing. But it will not affect change. What it does is it does help everybody feel better about the situation, and it may prop them up short term, but the addict isn't thinking, wow, what an awesome family, and I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm really going to buckle down and start taking life and my recovery seriously. This is I've dodged many bullets, and I am just so grateful. That is not what the addict is thinking. The addict is thinking expectation. The addict is thinking, cool, and it wasn't that bad. I did a whole bunch of bad stuff, destroyed everything, spent all my savings, blew this job. wrecked the car, whatever the disaster was, and it didn't play out that bad. And very quickly, they will begin to go back downhill. That's not real change. So that's how families, we can unknowingly, unwittingly keep it going, but it's not your fault. Imagine what can happen when you're armed with new information. When families actually understand what to do different and then do that, you will get different results. But first, you may have to deal with a couple of temper tantrums, right? Because when the addict, when the family starts saying no, the addict will throw temper tantrums, cuss, yell, scream, break stuff, threaten, whatever it is. But that's the part you got to let happen, because they're testing you. They're not used to hearing the word no. So when the families say, "Well, sorry, we're not going to take care of that thing," you will have a temper tantrum on your hands. However, they would normally display that, and which is the point where, as family members, we usually give in. Okay, fine, take the car keys. Only this time, you're not going to do that. You're going to say, "We love you, and we're just not going to help you die anymore, but we will help you get better." And this is our strategy. So when you're ready to get better, here we are. And the more boundaries families draw, the more assertive you are with your boundaries, the closer they will come back towards you. So, um, let me look at my notes here. Um, and give us, I don't even know if the chats are working. I'm not seeing them on my thing. Maybe I didn't turn them on, and I apologize. But you guys can always send us a message. That's actually our direct email address in our bio or in our profile. And I think the direct phone number is even in there too. So feel free to reach out to us anytime you want. um, here's some good food for thought. Addiction gets worse in comfort, which is the opposite of what we think, right? We're thinking, well, with our loved one, we want to establish more comfort, but that's what helps addiction grow. You want to create a situation. Well, let me rephrase that. You're not creating this situation. You're taking care of you, and the result of that will be the addict situation will become more uncomfortable. You need to allow that to happen because it's not your situation, it's their consequence, right? Whatever that may look like. But that's when real change occurs, right? When, just think about in your own life, the times where you've become most motivated was when you were driven by discomfort, whatever that is, afraid of not getting something, wanting something, and being willing to sacrifice for it. That's when humans do their most work. Um, we've got okay. I've got one more point I want to make, but here's a couple of nice things. I really need to read this. Well, I don't need to, but I want to, just so you guys can kind of get to know us a little bit. Here's some testimony. Here's some nice things that some people have said about Justin's Lighthouse. And this is a mom. This is from a mom. We're actually still working with this family, and of course, for confidentiality, we don't really show videos and pictures, even though some some companies will have what they call a live testimony, but they're paid actors. That's after 20 years of doing this, I've never had one of our clients say yes, they would be willing to go on camera. But this woman says, "You're the first person in a recovery center to explain recovery in a systematic way, which makes sense. I think of other places as a waste of time. My 40-year-old son is now finishing college after years of alcohol." And like I said, we're still working with this family. Yes, he came to us having been to 3 other rehab programs. Here's another one. Justin's Lighthouse, Dr. Lewis and Tina have saved my son's life. He's on the road to recovery and a new life thanks to their work with him. I cannot thank them enough or recommend them highly. And same mom, we did not save her son's life. God saved her son's life, but we do show up, and we do allow ourselves to be used, and we do share our wisdom and our experience and our knowledge and expertise, um, to help that process of change along. And so anyway, that's really neat to hear. There's several other ones on here, but here's what I want you to, as family members, here's what I want you to pay attention to today, because this is the beginning of your solution. Right strategies, right systems. And this is what that looks like for you. When families put themselves first, the addict always follows, but you have to trust that, right? So when a crisis occur, when their crisis occurs, you need to let it be their crisis. Does that mean you can't respond as a family member? Well, of course you can respond, but you need to not make it a priority. And of course, it's different. This is why we need, as families need coaching, families need guidance too. Families need to be led along in this process, just like the addict in their treatment journey. Um, First one is slow down, whatever that looks like. Stop trying to speed up, slow down. When was the last time you got your own nails done? When was the last time you went and played a round of golf? When was the last time you played some tennis? When was the last time you went to the lake? When was the last time you did something you enjoy? And it's and that's fine. Well, it was yesterday. We played a round of golf yesterday. Okay, that's fine. But you understand what I'm talking about. How consistent are you with that? And how many times have you dropped what you enjoy doing to go rescue your loved one? Often, right? That's how we get to this point after 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They become our higher power. There's a saying, in recovery, that the addict or the alcoholic have their drug of choice. So while they're running around town or living their life seeking drugs and alcohol, the family is treating the person as their drug of choice. So as family members, we're running around cleaning up their messes and chasing them and trying to head this off and make this better. And so it's this weird dynamic where the addict and alcoholic is chasing their stuff and we're chasing the addict, figuratively and literally. So when we're not actually in our car driving to the next crisis, we're thinking about it all day long. What's going to happen next? Waiting for the other shoe to drop. That is no way to live. And it's not helping them. It's not helping anybody. But it's not doing, think about this. As family members, we're taking the brunt of everything. And I know, in my journey, I've been in recovery now for well over 2 decades. I put my family and my mom especially through hell. I get it. That was part of my early journey. I had to make peace with that and make amends and look at that and get honest about that. And that's how we get better. But they will put us through hell and we will allow it because we don't know what else to do. Well, what if, other than just disconnect, right? As family members, we don't know what to do. So sometimes people say, you know what, just forget it. I got to cut all ties. Well, that's not healthy either. We're talking about a loved one, right? That's not what love looks like, but we don't know how to love ourselves. Loving yourself starts with slowing down and taking care of you, because that's usually the first thing that we've let go of. So focus on the things you can control. Can you control the amount of bail? Can you control how much they use? Can you control when they call? Can you control what they're going to do next, et cetera, et cetera? No, but you can control you, and which means you can have boundaries and you have a right to live up to them, and you can take care of you. You can leave the house. You can take the kids and leave the house, or you can demand that they move out of the house, or whatever that scenario might look like. And there's some nuances. Everybody may have a little bit different situation, but the solution is the same. So don't be afraid to seek some counsel, some coaching, some guidance from people who've been there and can tell you exactly what you should do next. And don't treat it like it's a race to the finish. You're in it for the long haul. Make a commitment Am I willing to move forward with this person, or is it time for me to start pulling away with love? And that's your right. You get to decide that. Um, the the patient, the addict, the alcoholic doesn't get to decide that. Okay. Number one, taking care of you by slowing down first. Number two, start thinking systematically. And that's what boundaries are all about, being assertive with your boundaries. You might not even know what a healthy boundary is supposed to look like. So be willing to learn that, which includes stopping reacting to every little thing. Um, and support only those things with the addict that will affect change. Example, yes, we will help you with your car payment if you are participating in that recovery program, or you're going to those counseling sessions, or whatever it is. Now, here's the kicker, this is where you got to hold firm, because you know what the addict will do. The addict will agree to that and then ask you for that car payment. And the minute they get that car payment, they will not go to their recovery session. So remember the deal that you just made. We'll make your car payment if you go to that session, or whatever's worked out. And then they say, okay, well, I need a check, or here's the number, or whatever. You have to say no. No, you haven't gone to a single recovery thing yet. Well, yeah, I know, but that doesn't even start till next week, and they're going to repo my car. Okay, well, sorry, but you got to do your thing first. And this is where a lot of families get themselves in trouble, because they did co-sign and they can't handle a foreclosure. But it's the same solution. So you're going to have to get creative about it. So take the car. Okay, well, we're going to make the car, but you can't, we'll make the car payment, but you can't drive it until we see some action. Your words have no meaning. We're not listening to that anymore. Your promises mean zilch. We have to have action. And the minute the families require action is the first day the addict will begin to change. Because up to this point, it's just a lot of false promises. Words have no meaning. The family's doing all the work, hoping that eventually our loved one will finally be grateful for our work, and they'll just wake up one day and go, you know what? I've really been treating everyone poorly, and golly, they made so many car payments. And no, that comes, but later in recovery. In the depths of addiction, that's not what the addict is thinking, and they're not going to think that. So don't wait for that. Take back control. And this is how you take back control. If you want to move them toward recovery, if you're okay with the chaos, just keep doing what you're doing, because the addict is going to keep doing what they're doing. So it's an option. That's the thing. The thing about recovery is these are all suggestions. We don't have to do any of them. But if you want a new life for you and your loved one, follow new strategies and you will get it. The third one, and I'm going to leave you with this, know the difference between help and relief. What? Help and relief sounds so similar. Help is doing something for someone that makes a difference, that is impacting change. Relief is literally helping them to feel better instantly. And so oftentimes addicts, they think they ask for help, but they really want relief. That's why look at your past experience in the past where they've said, oh, okay, I'm ready for help. I'm ready for help. And then as soon as they started feeling better, they started saying, you know what, I'm good. I got this. I don't need to do that thing, and I don't need to go to those meetings, and I definitely don't need to finish rehab, because I feel better now, and I don't even think about using. I don't even think about drinking. That is red flag number one. What's about to happen? Well, what always happens? They're about to relapse. because change hasn't occurred. They didn't really accept help, they just wanted relief. So recognize that as a family member, help support is focused on them doing better. Relief is focused on them feeling better. So use those three guidelines and make a dramatic change in not only their life, but most importantly, your life. And it's all about bringing this family dynamic back together. And I know, man, families can be so splintered at this point. But here's what I want to offer you. I want to invite you next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm going to do a 3-day workshop, and we're calling it Recovery Transformation Workshop. It's not all day, just 2 hours each day. Wednesday, 2 hours, Thursday, 2 hours, Friday, 2 hours. We're calling it a workshop because we're going to get really nitty gritty, and we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we talked about today and way more. It's going to be an immersion into why your addict has failed in the past, how to help an addict who doesn't want help, why love isn't enough, what's really happening in addiction, not what we think is happening, what healthy boundaries look like, and how you can begin to make a difference now. And this is the crazy part, it's only $27. You guys are going to get about $10,000 worth of information in a very short period of time. We're just doing it for $27. We're trying to help as many families as we can right now. It's the exact same stuff that we use in our residential program every day, every week. Our families have paid tens of thousands of dollars for this. So take advantage of it. I'm pretty sure we've got the link up in our bio. If we don't, I will get it there. I'm pretty sure it's there, but check it out or reach back out to us somehow because you want to be here, and it'll get you the link and you can deal with it. And when you check out, you're actually able to download one of our ebooks that we sell for $49. So for free, and we're just throwing it in. So you're going to get, at the very least, you're going to get a $49 very informative book about addiction and recovery, whether you even show up at the workshop. But everybody knows that saying, it's a fool who pays for advice and then doesn't take it. Don't just take the workbook, it's not a workbook, but it's an ebook. Don't just take the ebook and not show up for this workshop, because you're going to get immersed in what's really happening. You're going to hear things you've never heard before. And I don't care how far down you've been. I don't care how many rehabs your loved one has been to, or how many therapy sessions you've been to. You're going to hear things about addiction and recovery, and most importantly, the real solution that you haven't heard before. I appreciate you guys. We love you guys. We're so grateful for your support. I'm going to cut you loose. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and we'll be back. We're actually going to go live again over the weekend. So subscribe to our channel, and you'll know when we're live. Okay? Send us a comment if you need any help whatsoever.